This is a panel discussion to kind of talk through the working from home situation. So thank you all for joining us for the panel discussion on this shared experience of working from home during this unprecedented time. I think it's safe to say that none of us could have imagined just about 6 months ago that we'd be living through times like this. For many, including me and my family, this has been a challenging experience to stay positive, stay sane, and maybe sometimes even be productive. For our discussion today, we're going to be focused on the sheltering in place experience that most of us have been living through. But I also think it's vital that we don't lose sight of the enormous civil rights moment that is taking place right now. While this panel won't be discussing that in any detail, I'd personally urge everyone to consider taking concrete action to make your voice heard and to amplify the voices of those who need you to act now. So with that, we'll do a quick round of introductions. So I'd like to pass it over to Anne.
Hi, I'm Ann Chiza-Klein. I'm a senior SRE and acting manager at Pure Storage. My entire career has really been focused on making things better, or improving things. Part of that is our CI/CD pipeline with Spinnaker. Part of that is the work I do through diversity and inclusion through my work as the lead of the Women in Engineering group at Pure.
Thanks, Anne. Andy?
Hi, my name's Andy Glover. I currently run productivity engineering at Netflix. Previous to that, I was running delivery engineering at Netflix, so that's the Spinnaker team, and I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks, Andy. Rainey?
Hi, I'm Rainey. I'm a software engineer at Pinterest. I have been at Pinterest for 1.5 years. Previously, I worked on Spinnaker, and recently I transferred to data processing infra team. I'm also a woman leader, which lead a Pinterest data and the infra woman group. Nice to be here.
Thanks, Rainey. And last but not least, Clay.
Hi, I'm Clay McCoy. I'm a principal engineer at Armory, and I've been working on Spinnaker since it started at Netflix, and I've been working remotely since 2016 at several very different companies. And currently, I'm helping work on the plugin system for Spinnaker. Also excited to be here.
Thanks, Clay. So I guess we'll just go ahead and jump into it. So the first question to the panel, it's the major challenge. From pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, how has your working experience changed? Andy.
Well, I think that the biggest maybe challenge that I think I've faced, but I know others have faced, is the lack of kind of spontaneous or serendipitous conversations with folks you see face to face. And so I know I struggled with that for a little while because I didn't recognize how important it was when I would see someone in the hallway or when we're grabbing coffee or even after work or during lunch, and those quick 2 to 3 minute conversations were both a good social experience, but also like there was critical kind of business importance in that we were talking about something we were all working on, or I was learning about something new. And so in this new world where we're all remote, everything's very transactional, and so I do feel a sense of loss of information. And so it just the impetus is on me, the onus is on me to be very deliberate about setting up time to talk with various folks across the company to rekindle that social connection, but also get that context.
Any other thoughts on the work experience, Anne?
So for me, I was working at home on and off before, and my husband and I used to work right next to each other. That did not, once we're home, when we're both on calls, that did not work. I had to kick my kid out of his room so I could take over his room. And that really made me aware the privilege I have of having all this space. It made me like, especially with everything that's going on, how privileged and fortunate I am to have a job, to have enough space to kick my kid out so I can have an office. And it's really made me even more, I think, of an advocate for people who don't have those options and privileges, don't have a job, don't have a space, have toddlers underfoot, all that stuff.
Clay.
So I'd been working remotely for a while before everything changed with the pandemic. And before, the challenges seemed to be around like work-life balance, and time management, and taking control of the space that you want to work in, and finding social outlets that kind of disappear. And I kind of had that figured out after some practice. But post-pandemic, I guess I would people who are kind of thrust into this now after the pandemic, it's a different experience. Like I've got different challenges. I've got homeschooling to deal with during the day. A lot of the activities that we cancel that we counted on for social interactions are canceled. And so there's a whole new set of challenges. So also, if you're just thrust into this, you might not have a space at home that's ready. Your company might not have be prepared for remote meetings. So I would say, like, if this is thrust upon you now, it's not necessarily the best time to be figuring this out. So yeah, you definitely have extra challenges than you have in the past, and maybe in the future.
Yeah, I think personally, one of the phrases that I had never heard of until this shelter-in-place work from home happened is, "Hey, is anybody else able to hear him talk?" That's probably one of those common situations that I've seen pop up.
You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I would say that just even the technical barriers have been fascinating on top of all the social elements of it. Rainey, how has it been different for you all over in Pinterest?
Yeah, it changed a lot. I used to go to office every day, and now I have been working from home since March. I think I definitely miss seeing my teammates in person. And right now we have like remote meetings. Sometimes I feel isolated and lonely working home by myself. But I think the good side is I have more of flexibility. I can go grocery shopping during work time, and I can save time on commute. But I think the challenge is we still have to connect with each other, like interact with each other more often. Otherwise, we will lose like being isolated. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So switching over to maybe some ways that you all have found to try to remain productive in this new environment. What would be some examples or tips or suggestions that you would have for folks on how to attempt to remain somewhat productive? And I think realizing that that's not going to necessarily be the same as it was before. Clay.
So so a couple of things. One is this work-life balance gets way different. You don't have this commute to like change modes, going to work or coming home. So you have to find other ways to change your perspective and be present, whether it's at work or family. Maybe that's meditation. Maybe there's a lot of ways to deal with that. Maybe you've got your own space, but finding that balance. And the thing about that, I used to have a lot of guilt because I thought I had to nail that every single day. But this is a marathon, not a sprint. So I use calendar a lot. Like you look at a calendar, that's my schedule. This is the time that people expect me to be certain places, virtually probably, and adjust everything around that. And another thing is time tracking apps have never really worked for me, but kind of a hack I've found is I like to listen to music, like on Spotify. So I've got these playlists that give me new music every week. And if I haven't made it all the way through those, that's a sign that, hey, maybe I didn't do enough, have enough builder time this week, right? I don't know. That's some of the stuff that's worked for me.
I really like that Spotify idea. Andy.
Yeah, just to build on Clay's point about boundaries and whatnot. Obviously when we were going to the office, it was very easy to separate. Like, I get up in the morning, hang out with the family, and then go to the office, work all day, come home and hang out with the family. And then when we went to, shelter in place, I was discombobulated, and I ended up, to the marathon, not a sprint. I'd have these sprint days where it's like meetings 9 to 5. And I did it for a couple of weeks, and it was, incredibly exhausting. Like Zoom conversations, for whatever reason, I think many people feel this way. It's just like physically, emotionally exhausting, because you're processing things differently, and you're trying to figure out how they respond to you. That I think is maybe a normal human interaction. We take it for granted. So anyways, what I ended up doing, and my kids were, homeschooling as well. They had a lunch break. And so I synchronized my calendar with them. And so I am very deliberate about, like basically around lunchtime, I block off, there's no meetings. I hang out with my family, have lunch, and also just kind of decompress. And it gives me a new kind of energy for the afternoon. And then one more thing I'll say is I increasingly am doing just phone calls rather than Zoom. And while I love looking at other people and seeing, emotions and facial reactions, it's really nice. In fact, someone said it earlier, they go for walks. Like I go for a walk and I just have a phone call, and it's like, it's awesome. I love it. I look forward to those meetings.
Anne.
So I'm going to riff on what both Andy and Clay said. So Andy, I'm totally with you about those walking meetings. Like they are so important to get off of Zoom, to get outside. I think being outside is really important when you're, you've got that, like some of my days start with Zoom at 8 and end with Zoom at 9:30 at night. Okay. And granted, some of that's personal, but it's still all Zoom. Like it's all Zoom. So the walks, the regular breaks with your family, especially if you have kids, like really being specific. Clay, you talked about blocking aside time for working the Spotify playlist. You can do like Pomodoros is another technique that some people find useful. One of the folks on my team uses The Lion King, plays it all the way through. That's the block. Can we get this stuff done in a Lion King sized interval? But having that dedicated for me, it's software development time. Having that really dedicated focus time is super important. I wanted to pull up something that maybe people haven't thought about, and it's really engaging your senses while working at home. And that's kind of fuzzy, and I know it sounds mushy, but what you see influences you. So what's on your Zoom? What's your Zoom background? Like if you put a tropical scene, do you feel more relaxed? What are you looking at? Are you looking at a wall? Are you looking at a monitor? Are you set up? I look out a window, right? I'm in a corner, but I look out a window. What do you hear? Do you have headphones on? Can you block aside time, or do you have ambient noise? What do you smell? Do you open a window so you have a breeze? Like all of this stuff can kind of alleviate a lot of the tension of sitting in your chair for a very long period of time. As if you have a harmonious environment around you, it can really help alleviate that, and then taking those breaks.
Yeah, just one comment on that real quick. I actually have found that certain sunnier spaces that are in my house, or like backyard, or porch, or whatnot, especially ones that have plants, have become a lot more soothing to sit around or sit near. I don't know what that means, but it definitely means that I need to be better about taking care of plants that are in my environment. Rainey, did you have any thoughts?
Yes. So I'm using an app called Forest, which I can set up a focus time 25 minutes intervals, like focus 25 minutes, then rest for 5 minutes. I think it helped me a lot to stay focused. Another thing is I'm using the feature on Slack, which can mute messages during focus hour, and it will change the status into like a bubble something, and so that I can focus working instead of disrupted by those messages. The last thing is I feel like working from home can easily mix up my personal life and working. So I force myself to shut down my laptop every day, 6 p.m. to like cut off the work so that I can stay more productive during working hours. Yeah, that's 3 things I can think about.
So a lot of the audience is actively developing software, and the way that we usually are used to doing that is maybe we would get into a room and we would whiteboard stuff out, or we would try to just hash out something quickly together to get on the same page before we would start working on things. Obviously, the get into a room with a bunch of people right now is both not possible and probably, well, even if it was, maybe not the best idea. So how have you, what are ways that you've adapted maybe that kind of challenge? How have you been able to simulate or solve that whiteboarding need? I think, Anne, you had mentioned you had some thoughts on this one.
So actually, so I have not solved the whiteboarding question. I'd be really curious to hear what people have done. Also for trading code back and forth, like that's actually been a real issue for us. And so we've been like pasting it in Slack, and we're trying to figure out like how do we communicate where we are. I think we might try, one of the techniques we use with interviewing candidates and see if like try code pair and see if that works. But if people have ideas, I'd absolutely love to hear them, because the whiteboarding and the co-development are really, really hard to do.
Rainey or Clay? Clay.
So I don't have an answer for the whiteboarding, but working on Spinnaker, it's a community project that spans multiple companies. So inter-company communication has always been a bit of an issue. And I guess we kind of get around that with making documents, requests for comments when anybody's going to do a big feature, put pull requests out early and get feedback on them. And there's a Slack community where you can talk through things, ask questions, get feedback, and all that works pretty well. And we're kind of used to using it since that's the ways that we talk to other companies like Netflix and Google, and so it works pretty well in our company as well.
Rainey?
For me, I think we use Google Doc during the team meeting to share some ideas or draw diagrams for the team. Another tool is called Jamboard, which we can also like draw a diagram to discuss ideas during team meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, I've personally witnessed a fair number of artists cropping up across the organization with Jamboard. It's always impressive to me.
Yeah, that's what I've seen. Is Jamboard is quite impressive for those that have like a digital pen and can actually draw. It's actually quite fun to watch that. I have not used it because I can't draw and I don't have a digital pen, although you could order one on Amazon. But nevertheless, it seems very effective.
So on the topic of meetings, since that came up, one of the interesting questions has come up. I think we touched on the idea of, hey, if we have tons of meetings all day, it's really exhausting. It's exhausting in a way that I think none of us really fully expected, because it doesn't seem like it should, right? It seems like that's a similar schedule to what we used to have, and we're not having to get up and move from room to room. So why is it more exhausting to have over Zoom is an interesting question. But maybe we also have too many of them, and maybe there's ways that we can identify the ones that we don't need, or maybe there's other ways that we can get that kind of discussion or alignment without necessarily having to have everybody synchronously on a video chat, slowly draining their energy levels. Any ideas or thoughts on meetings? Anne, I'll let you go ahead and take it before I keep babbling.
So Andy mentioned earlier Zoom fatigue. So I was curious last night, Andy, and being a good engineer, I did some research. There are 94.5 million Google search results for Zoom fatigue. And why did I search for this? I was looking at another article written about a month ago, and there were 60-something million articles on search results on Zoom fatigue. So it's real, it's growing, it's a huge challenge, right? And I do think that making sure you get those breaks is absolutely essential. But I'd like to hear what people do on their breaks to alleviate that fatigue.
Clay.
So to me, it's not really the number of meetings. It's like what type of meetings could be async instead, right? And for us, I guess we've been trying to push more and more to see the boundaries of what we can do async, whether it's talking over Slack or in documents. The things that usually are better to not be async in a real Zoom call are things like some more organic things, some types of planning where you want to do some brainstorming. Pair programming works pretty good over Zoom. And just sometimes we schedule time to get together and not directly talk about work and just build some rapport. I guess the balance isn't that different than when I was in the office, of thinking of it in terms of like how much I want time to build something useful, but I need enough meetings to get the context to know that I'm actually building something useful. So I need just enough time and meetings to know I'm on the right track, and then hopefully quite a bit of time to build that and put stuff in front of people.
One tip that I think it was something that it was discussed a long time ago before this video chat or video situation had really become the common way of interacting. But it was that try to have an agenda clearly outlined ahead of the meeting time, and then once you've covered the agenda, do your best to cut that meeting short. Give that time back, because it's very easy when you've booked that time to want to consume it, and it doesn't preclude people from interacting and having that social time if necessary, but it doesn't require everybody to be synchronously doing that. And I've found that to be something that has been helpful when that happens. And I'm in a lot of Andy's meetings, so I'm just making a point when we cover the agenda. Any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so I tend to there are those Zoom calls you have to be on and contributing in, like this one, right? You have to be visually present, you're talking, you're really hashing things out with your team. And then there are the calls where you just have to listen and maybe watch the slides. So for those, I'm outside. And I try to be in a different place outside every time, or I'm walking, or I'm just not at my desk. And that really helps a lot, because I find I can even focus more on the context of the call when I'm not stuck there like pinned to my computer and my body is saying, get up and move, get up and move.
So we've got about, it looks like 3 or 4 minutes left. So I'd like to switch over to maybe advice that you would give to individuals or companies in how to support work from home better. I think Clay has a lot of experience in this space, especially. And so maybe starting it off with you, Clay, what would you recommend for either individuals or for companies?
It's certainly easier to work remotely if you're working at a company that embraces that, like thankfully Armory does. That means meeting rooms set up so that it's easy to bring people in. Slack, lots of async tools. You don't want to be the only guy working remote because you miss stuff, right? And so trying to record and make that stuff available if you don't happen to be there just keeps everybody on the same page. Individually, I'd say just like everything else, be present and enjoy what you're doing while you're doing it. Like embrace the flexibility of working remotely, find what works for you. Take some time to appreciate stuff that you're able to do remotely, whether it's being able to prepare a nice dinner and with your family or attend a kid's school event. Like take some time and think, hey, I'm doing this because I didn't have to be somewhere at a certain time. and have a commute and be stuck and that sort of thing.
Rainey or Anne?
I think for me, I feel like remote working makes me hard to speak during large team meetings. Sometimes I easily stay muted forever. So I took some speaking training classes from internal training website, and I feel like it helped a lot so that I can have some skills how to present better during team meeting remotely. Yeah, I think maybe company can provide more trainings like that. Yeah.
Oh, that's phenomenal. That's fascinating. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, Anne, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was about to say, I think
love that.
that's a great idea. I think also
Yeah.
Zoom breakout rooms where you know you have your introverts, right? You give them a safer place to talk. So breaking down your meetings. The one thing I would love it if people could take away from at least my part of this panel is when we're under stress, we tend to react quickly. We tend to react with our gut reactions. And our gut reactions are often contain more implicit bias because we're thinking fast rather than thinking slow. And this is a really, really important time to be an advocate, to be an ally, to think about inclusion on all your teams, whether you're including the introverts, whether you're including people with other backgrounds, and you really need to really be aware and really engage everyone, especially people who maybe don't have the privileges or the advantages that you have.
Thank you, Anne. I would go to Andy, but as we all know what the work from home situation is like, there is some technical challenges there. So we won't be able to go over to that. But I did want to say in the last probably 30 seconds that we have, I really, really appreciate everybody participating in this panel. I think it's been a really fascinating, challenging time. And I think hopefully folks, all the folks that are listening to this understand that everybody is going through this. Empathy and patience is so important at this time, and maybe now more than ever. So please be nice to each other, give each other space. I fortunately had 30 minutes free where my two kids didn't run into the room, which is actually not the most terrible part of it all anyway. So thank you again, and thank you for joining, and thank you for all the thoughtful comments. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.